The Ravens are what they are. They usually have, one of the better drafts, especially when they draft always a little bit further down because they win and so forth, and always seem to let the board come falling down in place. Overall, I thought there were a couple of interesting things. I wasn't blown away, to be honest with you, this year, but that's okay. It's just, again, one of those situations where I think they did a pretty good job, getting they added some more firepower to that receiver room, which we knew was a distinct possibility with Zay Flowers, and they were able to get a quality linebacker like Trenton Simpson to maybe land into third. Maybe that's where he should have gone, but there were some possibilities of him being a second round draft pick, something like that. I'm not sure he would have been a late first, but so maybe that was a good bargain. And then the kid Vorhees from USC, you throw out the injury, and maybe he's a middle round pick.
Absolutely. I mean, Vorhees without that injury, we actually talked about this leading up to the draft when we did the guards. Take the injury out of it. That was sustained at the scouting combine during a live drill, one of the position drills. He was likely a 4th or 5th round pick at worst. There were even some that considered him a day 2 pick because they viewed him as a starter in year 1. And that's usually where you go up and grab those guys. So the question was not, is he going to move down? He's going to move down because he's going to miss. I haven't really confirmed this yet, but he's got to miss all of 2023. You don't see an offensive lineman tear an ACL in March and make it back before the end of the season, right?
And that's okay.
Absolutely okay. So the question here was, how much value would he lose draft weekend knowing that you had to take a redshirt year? And this is not his first injury either. He's had a couple season-ending injuries from earlier in his career, but he was one of the most experienced linemen in the class, a guard only most likely, but someone that played a really high-level football. PFF had him graded according to their scale at a really high level. So it was, getting a guy like that in 7th round is kind of what you're going for in round 7 anyway, regardless, right? Someone that you want to develop and maybe contribute the next year after the rookie season. So, and this guy is pro-ready, technique, mentally, maturity. So, hey, rehab your knee. You have more time than you're going to need. So you're not going to spend an entire offseason before you get thrown into the mix trying to rehab that knee. You'll have 2 off seasons, this one and next one, to really learn the system. And Baltimore, according to the numbers, might have a hole at guard next year. So just kind of like an intelligent pick. And we see this, like you said, you opened up with, we see them make intelligent draft picks every single year. Whether we call it, hey, the board comes to them, or they have a really good pulse on what other teams are doing, when to trade up, when to trade down. Was there a home run pick like last year, the way what they got Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum? Not really. But if you ask the guys in that building, they're ecstatic about their number 1 pick, Zay Flowers.
All right. So, Flowers, we said this before the draft that they were going to need to target a slot receiver. And we talked about these players, including Addison. And we just went through some of the receivers, too. Matter of fact, I know that they had some visits with even Johnson from TCU. But why not Flowers? He could end up being the best of the lot. And now, with the veteran like Beckham in there, another veteran like Aguilar, and you throw in youngsters like Bateman and Flowers, no more excuses. No more. Don't want to hear it anymore. And This is going to be the opportunity now with Lamar Jackson's new contract. We know what the tight ends can do. We know what the running game can do. We know the offensive line is strong enough. It's all now on the shoulders of Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, they've put all the resources into Lamar in the passing game. Financially, draft picks, free agency. It's all been about Lamar, the new offensive system, and supporting him. Just think about the 2 weeks leading up to the draft. Lamar, we didn't know where he was going to play. They didn't have Beckham, and they hadn't spent the 1st-round pick on Flowers yet. So in a very short amount of time, the trajectory from the outside anyway completely changed, like a reverse of 180 degrees. And Flowers, they're ecstatic to get him. Something about their scouting process that's very interesting to me, and I'm not sure if other teams do this, but this is kind of cool that before the final decisions, before the final board is made, they'll hand 7 to 10 players out to their entire scouting staff. just 7 to 10 players. Hey guys, rank these guys.
Okay.
Let's get a consensus.
Okay.
Every single one of their scouts has Zay Flowers as the number one guy in that group. So whether it's that, and that included guys outside of wide receiver as well. So the entire system there.
You're talking about guys that they felt they could draft.
Right. And it could have been
their
any
target
position.
area. Okay. Any position in the target area. Okay.
Correct. So Flowers was the guy, a consensus pick, and it seems like they have a system that we haven't seen yet, by the way, this new offensive system that really tailors to this kind of player, the inside-out versatility. And, he's an easy kid to like off the field, easy kid to like in the locker room. And, Baltimore does it again.
Now, there were other couple of needs that we targeted, and one, we talked about it with the guard position. So we opened up with Vorhees, and they also threw in another late-round draft pick. So talk about the 6th rounder.
Yeah, so the name, I'll try to not butcher this. I'm just going to say it one time.
I was leaving that up to you.
Yeah. And then I'll call him the kid from Liberty. But Amuve Lalulu is from Oregon. Highly experienced player, started 30 games, mainly a tackle at Oregon. He was a junior college transfer and tested a lot better than what I thought he would based on watching his tape. And this team has done this a few times in recent years. They take a guy that I was not incredibly impressed with on tape, athletically balanced, body control. And then he goes and blows up a workout. So he's a little bit better athlete than he is a football player at the time. And then they develop him into a quality football player. And this is kid. I mean, you take away some of the shortcomings that he had athletically on tape. He's got great size. He's got great power. He's a hardworking kid. And he's going to give them some inside-out versatility. I bet they're going to give him a shot at tackle initially, but I bet he's going to kind of settle into a 7th or 8th lineman on game day that can kind of back up in emergency spots, both inside and outside.
And look, this gives them a really good opportunity with Cleveland getting the chance to be the main guy again. And if something happens, it doesn't work out, is it possible they have that guy on the roster? We just use up a 6th and a 7th. Mm-hmm. Maybe they do. They don't have to go into next year's draft spending a high draft pick on a left guard. But maybe they have it in-house. Maybe they don't. Yeah. They'll find out. Okay, mm-hmm. So the one thing, now, we were thinking they needed to add a little bit of depth along the defensive line, mm-hmm. and they did not do that. That is something that I think was the only spot that they did not improve upon. But we also said that they needed some edge depth, pass rush edge depth. And the one guy that they brought in, only one, was the kid Tavius Robinson. Mm. So talk about how he fits in, because is that his role? Is that going to be his role? Because, again, you look at the pass rushers, Away, Ajabo, Bowser, those are your 3. We still don't know about pretty much Away or Ajabo. We know what Bowser does. So Robinson, this is that pretty much what they're hoping for? Robinson that's going to be his number 1 goal?
Yeah, different profile than the guys that you just listed. Those guys are a little bit more about speed, outside threat, explosion. They have some size to them, but they're not power defenders. They're not edge setters in the run game. You're not going to line them up in a 4-eye technique and tell them to drive the tackle backwards. Robinson, his best tape is essentially lining up as a 4-eye, basically head up over the tackle. He does this over the tight end really well, where he gets his long arms on those pads of the guy across from him and drives him backwards. He doesn't look like the most powerful guys, but he plays strong. So he fits a different profile than the current edge defenders that they have.
Okay.
And the name that came up, both on my scouting report and in the press conference from Baltimore post-draft, was Zadarius Smith. And that's where he started to make a name. He made a name for himself in this defense years ago. And I think that's where the kind of role and the kind of player this kid could be.
That's what they see in him.
Yeah, that's what they see in him, kind of inside-out versatility. So, yeah, they didn't add a lot of defensive line depth, but they did get a guy that can do some damage inside, that C-gap.
Okay. And then the other position that we felt they needed to add maybe as much as 2 players was corner. Mm-hmm. They did add 1, but it was the 5th round. So really they did not – what they did do, though, since our last conversation, is add in Rock Ya-Sin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's
that was, I was going to make sure you put that in there because they did essentially add 2 corners over the weekend. One of them a veteran that won't be a long-term option, but he could be a Band-Aid. And the corner, this is a kid, Blue Kelly from Stanford, that probably gave Drake London in 2021 his toughest game when Stanford matched up against USC.
Okay.
Really big, physical, zone man, whatever you want to put him in. He's probably a little bit better in zone because I do question some of the turn and run speed ability. He plays a little tight.
Lots of experience too.
Yeah, smart kid. Went to Stanford. Dad played in the NFL.
Yeah, that's true.
His dad, Brian Kelly, played in the NFL for a long time. So, I think there's something similar to what they did last year in the 4th round in drafting Jalen Armour Davis, a corner from Alabama.
Okay.
You're not sure if he's going to be the guy at any point, but it's a quality body at a position that's hard to find quality bodies.
All right. And then taking a look at the free agents after the draft, there were several names, and the ones that stick out for me on offense, we talked about the Maryland receivers on Wednesday's broadcast, and we did point out the fact that all 3 of them did not get drafted. So they get a local kid there. They also, another receiver. So they also drafted the Vokola kid, which with this particular offense, I think could be interesting. Now we know they're loaded at tight end here, but I just, you know what? That's the perfect kind of kid. He's on the practice squad. Something happens with one of the top 3 guys. Hopefully you can swing him in. And maybe eventually he's a guy that you can keep an eye on. But I think he's an intriguing pickup and a perfect fit of where a kid like that would want to land. And then the biggest, of course, I'm going to save for last, is, as you know, one of my favorite sleepers in the draft did not even get drafted. And maybe it's not too surprising. It's a running back. I know when you test, he's not the best testable kind of guy, but Keaton Mitchell in this offense, wow, I feel pretty good about him too, where he landed.
You have to, it doesn't have to change the colors of his workout gear either.
Yeah.
Right. He's going from purple to purple, but we talked about him at good length, and I originally had a day 3 grade on him. A scout that I worked with told me that I should be putting a round 3 or round 4 grade on him, just based on production and skill set. Then the combine rolls around, and you start hitting some metrics that, like I've said in the past, some teams are just going to cross you off the board, no matter how much they like your tape. If you don't hit certain minimums, they won't be there. And
especially running backs.
Especially a guy that he is a good receiver, but I wouldn't label him a great receiver. I thought he was above average there. So, and like you said, the position value of the running back, there's a lot of things that just simply went against him, but by no means is this a bad player. And I do think there's a spot on an NFL roster for a kid like this. And we haven't seen this new offense yet under Todd Monken, but you can really look back at some of the offenses that he has run, both in the NFL and college. There's a spot for a Keaton Mitchell. So if he goes out there and presses during training camp, he's got a very good shot. The name that jumps out to me from an undrafted free agency perspective is the guard, Tayshaun Manning from Kentucky. This is a kid that when I make my top 150 going into a season, we work on this. I start working on this soon for next year. They're not the most accurate, right? Because there's not a lot of tape study behind it. But he was in it for a long time. He was a guy that I always viewed as a draftable player. And then, yes, he, like many other players on Kentucky's roster, did not play well in 2022. But when you talk about size, athleticism, experience at multiple spots, this team loves big bodies in the trenches, and they do the most they can with these guys. Some teams don't do a good job with it. Baltimore does, and I think there is a spot for another guy on this team to make the roster as an undrafted free agent. So if he can even show some versatility and maybe even play some right tackle, it's going to strengthen those odds even further.
Well, and as we just said, now you can add Manning to the mix. That there's a 3 lineman now. Potentially that they will have a shot at replacing Cleveland before next year's draft if Ben Cleveland does not solidify that spot. By the way, just look it up. A 6-year career. It's a lot of experience between 2 SEC programs. Mm-hmm. And he also had that, what did he have? Some sort of cancer issue?
Yeah, I believe it was a melanoma type. So, cancer survivor.
That was in high school, though, right?
Yes, top-notch kid too. He started a nonprofit for people that have had similar situations to him. Really mature individual, someone that is going to be very hard to cut if his a play on the field is even just good enough. He's going to be a hard guy to get rid of. So that's another kind of feather in his cap in terms of making this roster.